IronOverload.io hardcore coming your way, episode 80. This is going to be a really important episode because we got an expert here, Mobster, who's going to help you on this one. We're going to talk about the best way to lift heavy and injury free. And this is very, very important because we see so many people, Mobster, who are doing so fucking good. They're doing
Yeah,
so fucking good. And then the injury bug hits them. It really,
yeah,
really sucks. It's like watching your favorite football team and they're doing great for the season. They're undefeated. And then
mm,
boom, they lose their quarterback. They lose this guy. They lose that guy. And you're like, oh shit. All that fucking hard work we put in was for nothing. Now we got nothing to work with. So we don't want to get to that point. And listen, prevention is the best way when it comes to injury. So we're going to give you some tips and tricks on how to prevent these problems from coming up. So Mobster, why don't you come in and chime in?
right. I will start this. The regular listener and people that follow us on the forum will know that I actually got a little bit of shit, and probably for the right reasons, for not necessarily being as helpful as I could have been, with understanding that one or two of the people that I was commenting about had injuries or were still dealing with injuries. And I got into it later on by way of exploration, by explaining the things they were doing that perhaps arguably were wrong, to not keep getting injured. And the things that we've done, including Steve and I, at some point in our training, in other words, we've learnt the fucking hard way because we were morons, and now we're not morons, or hopefully less moronic in terms of our approach to our business. Look, let's start at the beginning. Most listeners are younger. Most people that go to the gym are younger. And when you're younger, you're fucking invincible. You fall on your ass, you bounce back up, you rub your ass. I fall on my ass, I'm down there for 5 minutes, and it's going to hurt for a fucking week. That's just my age. Okay, I've had the 16-week thing that I've talked about on other shows where I was in fucking agony from sheer wear and tear on my back, and I had to do a bunch of rehab, and it took me 16 weeks to recover. I've had frozen shoulder, again, probably from training a certain particular way in certain pathways of training that I've done for the longest time. And that took, when I looked it up, Steve, that's 18 months to 2 years to recover. Oh, fuck, are you kidding me? 2 years? And that's normal, right? And again, listen, the guys that listen to this show are going to be pushing it. They're going to be using PEDs. They're going to be kicking ass in the gym. And the reality of the situation is, if you're in a gym pushing it, if you've had injuries in the past and you're still pushing it, shit will happen. You're going to get injured. So what we're going to try and do as best we possibly can, like I explained in the thread when I replied to the whole what people I think people are doing and what they really kind of should be doing. And again, been there, seen there, done it myself, is the best policies or things you can do to try to limit injury and stay being able to lift heavy, train hard, still kill the volume, and remain as injury free as possible. Now, I'll preface this also with, and I've said this on other shows, and Steve and I have talked about different kinds of athletes. The best athletes in the world, whether that's pro American football or as I've used, but Steve's used a couple of examples from that arena, I've used top strength athletes, specifically people that train to be and compete in world's strongest man type events. And I can think about rugby, Steve, normal soccer, tennis, whatever. It doesn't matter what you do. It wasn't the case years ago, but it's the case now. As much time, or nearly as much time, is spent on rehab and recovery and the things that help with those things as they are on the training. And a lot of that is down to simple reasons. A, it gives you more playing time, and B, money. If I'm paying someone $100,000 a week, say a good high-end uh, rugby player in this country, or £250,000 or more, so $400,000 per week as a soccer player, or a $30 million contract for pro American football, the quicker you are able to recover from your game, the quicker I can have you back on the field performing at a high level, winning the titles, getting the medals, winning the cups, and making my team the most successful team, and getting the biggest fucking game of the year, and your team, my team, comes out as a winner. Okay, that's just obvious. If you're golf, you play golf, and you are the next Tiger Woods, and I've got you for a multi-million-dollar, potentially $1 billion over the next 10-year type contract, and I can have you playing in every fucking tournament at the highest level. My company benefits from you being out there, being seen on the TV. That's just obvious. And then it's without the athlete themselves being able to perform at a higher level. So we learn from what they're doing. And what we should learn is that rest and recovery rehab are as important. Time off sometimes is as important as what we do in the gym. So I want to emphasize those three things. Let's start with rest very quickly. Too many people, and Steve and I could agree on this, do not get enough sleep or enough restful sleep. That's number one. You aren't doing, and I'll bring Steve in for this as well, you aren't doing enough things for recovery and you're not rehabbing. And sometimes that means you're doing the same exercise that hurt you and you continue to do the same exercise that hurt you instead of actually rehabbing. So talk about rest, recovery, and rehab to begin with, Steve.
Yeah, so what I do on leg day, I'll go on the treadmill to warm up, and I'll do a walk, a brisk walk on the treadmill, um, and make sure I get my legs nice and warmed up. Now, this is even more important for those of you who live in a cold climate because you walk into the gym, your muscles are going to be even colder because of the cold weather. The time it
Yeah.
takes you to walk from your car to the gym, your muscles are cold and you touch your skin and it's cold. That's not good. Now you're going to go train on a cold muscle. Now you're going to open yourself up for injury. So very important to do some cardio before your leg day. Okay. On an upper body day, what I like to do is warm up. Okay. And I'll take some light weights and especially the shoulders. And one of the most prime injuries are shoulder injuries because you go into your workout upper body day, your shoulders are stiff and it's like a rubber band. You take a rubber band, you put it in the freezer, it gets hard. Then you stretch
Yes.
that rubber band and it snaps. The same thing with your shoulder. Your shoulders are a bunch of soft tissues that aren't made to deal with the rigorous amount of training that we put them through. So what ends up happening is you start your training and you're doing bench press or you're doing rows or you're doing anything where you're involving your shoulders and you start tearing up your shoulder and then you go in your next workout and you tear them even more. So it's very important to warm up. So I'll get light weights and I'll do circles with my shoulders, really get them warmed up, really get them moving, get them loose. Okay. The more we build muscle and the more we weight train over time and the more we use
Yes.
steroids over
Yes.
time, the more things get inflexible. So it's very important. You're not stretching pre-workout. You're not stretching. I didn't say to stretch. I said to warm up. And then post-workout, once your body calms down, that's when you want to do your stretching. So it's very important to work on your mobility and your stretching post-workout to keep things loose and keep things flexible. The most successful athletes out there, I don't care if it's bodybuilding, I don't care if it's football, I don't care if it's anything. You've got nose tackles who are 300 pounds, Mobster, in the NFL, who can do splits. They're
Yeah.
so flexible. So it's very, very important to be flexible. If you're not flexible and you're not mobile, okay, you're going to open yourself up for injuries. And that's what happened to me. When I was in my mid 30s, I got so fucking strong that my shoulders, and I wasn't warming up properly. I was one of those people who was too much of a tough guy, too much of an egomaniac to go in there and warm up. I didn't want to be seen benching just the bar or just one plate,
I
right?
bet you for a broomstick,
So I'd go
Steve.
in there and
Yeah.
I'd throw on
Yeah.
2 plates to do my warm ups. And
No.
that's not right. You got to warm up properly, guys.
Yes.
And another thing
Yes.
I was doing 1 or 2 rep maxes over and over. That's another thing you can't
Yeah.
be doing. So these are simple things, and it's important to be mobile. So basically, I'll give you an example. Google the eagle pose. It's a yoga pose. If you can't do the eagle pose, that means you're not flexible enough. I don't care how muscular you are. I don't care how much muscle you have, how much strength you have. If you cannot even do the eagle pose, that means your shoulders and your elbows aren't flexible enough, and your wrists aren't flexible enough, and your hands aren't flexible enough, and all your upper body isn't flexible enough. And that's going to cause you to have injuries. So it's very important to do the stretching. If you have to go to your yoga class a couple times a week, go to hot yoga a couple times a week, that is a
Yes.
great way to improve your improve your flexibility and your mobility, and that will actually keep you healthier just by going to those yoga classes 2 or 3 times a week. And then if you don't have time to go to yoga classes, using those things you're learning in the yoga class and doing them after the gym or doing them at home. I see people go to the gym, walk in there, and just start lifting weights, no warm-ups. And I see them after the gym picking their shit up and leaving. No stretching at all. Are they doing that at home? I don't know. Maybe they're warming up at home and then coming to the gym and then leaving and going home and stretching. I don't know. It's not my business. But I'm just saying I highly doubt that. So
Yeah,
you have
the
to
great
do these
vast
things.
majority, Steve, are driving to the gym, like you said, walking in, signing in, and hitting the weights. I walk to the gym and I walk home, and I'll tell you how bad this has been in the past as an example of the difference it made. I used to have a gym in a warehouse across the road from my house in Gloucester. That's where the business was. We had a gym in there, and that would be 50 yards away, 40 something meters away from the house. And I would go in there, and I was lifting to the point of the competitive level that I was doing at the time. And then I would come back straight into my house, have something to eat, sit at my desk at the computer, eating, and then I wouldn't move from that desk for 4 hours while I did the IT work for the company. The problem was I was literally walking 40 meters, 50 yards, and then not moving for 4 hours. I was stiffening up like that rubber band analogy that Steve mentioned at the beginning. Now I walk to the gym, and my walk to the gym is that I don't hang about when I'm walking to the gym, Steve. It's a good 10 minutes. I probably get there and back 2,500, 3,000 steps. If I take the longer route back via the shops to get some lunch or food or whatever else, you're talking about the best part of 2 miles in total there and back. And that straight into the gym, even on a leg day to day. If I didn't do that, I've noticed a difference in stiffness and I noticed a difference in recovery. Whether that's going to the gym and warming up properly and stretching properly, the percentage of people that stretch properly in gyms is tiny. And again, the benefit that I can think of the very top Olympian type bodybuilders, and I'm including Ronnie Coleman, that was out, I think, at one point. Flex Wheeler was able to do high kicks and stretches. Ronnie, I believe, did a splits in one of these early Mr. Olympia type competitions. And they, on one of the sort of making build up to the Olympia type videos that they used to do back in the day, him and Jay Cutler and the others were going and they were getting sports massage once or twice a week. Hell, I think he used to relax by getting his toenails fucking treated at one of them podiatry type places. And he was completely relaxed after the gym, half asleep, recovering, and at the same time just having some sort of therapeutic session that allowed him to relax and recover from the gym. And again, it become actually super important. I know top end strength athletes that are doing ice baths, cryotherapy, getting sports massages. Sometimes it's actually part of their sponsorship deal with a local place that does that, and they'll go there and talk to the person on cameras, but the YouTube videos, that kind of stuff. And what you don't realize, and I think Eddie Hall's a great example of this, when he did his 500 kilo deadlift, he was talking about 4 hours of the worst workouts you can imagine. Crazy, crazy, crazy shit in the gym that we know that he did, building up for the 500 kilos, and then another 3 to 4 hours every fucking day. And in fact, he had some sort of isolation chamber, the name of which escapes me, like an iron lung, where the pressure was increased to 2 or 3 times atmospheric normal pressure, and he was in there for an hour. It was equivalent, I believe he said it was equivalent of 8 hours recovery if he spent 1 hour in there. And his wife and his then young son were in bed asleep, and he was in this chamber for an hour to increase and speed up his recovery. And he actually made that chamber. He's actually now got one professionally built, but he made that chamber himself because he's mechanically minded in order to increase and speed up his recovery. Now, you don't have to do crazy shit like that, but take note. Top athletes, top bodybuilders, top strength athletes, etc. They make sure that their beds are comfortable. One World's Strongest Man competition, Steve, I think Brian Shaw and someone else, they went to this hotel where they were staying in somewhere in Africa, and the beds were horrendous, and they literally went to the shops and bought new mattresses to put on their beds at the hotel. So the week that they were there, the 3 days of competing, they would rest and relax in the swimming pool in the morning, just paddling around, chilling the fuck out, resting and relaxing to recover from the workouts. Something else which I think is important, and I'm probably a good example of this via the logs on the forum, Steve, is it might sometimes seem like I'm going flat out all the time. But when I'm on cycle, I build to a peak of strength. When I come off cycle, I back the fuck off. Now, you can literally do this in a session. I train hard all week, but have one back and off session. Or you can do what I do, which is cycling my strength up and down. And arguably, the phrase that covers this, Steve, is either cycling strength or what is called deloading. And I use a sports car analogy that you and I have used in the past. Imagine you have a high-end sports car. How many times have I used a Ferrari Lamborghini example? If I jump into it, doesn't matter what car it is, but let's use a high-end sports car. We know it can do 180 miles an hour. We know that it revs at 6,000 RPM. Let's get in it and do 3 hours with a full up tank. And if we'll be incredibly lucky if we can actually do this for 3 hours of having it in the red zone, going 180 miles an hour, 6,000 RPM for 3 fucking hours. Couldn't do it. I don't care what car you're driving. It cannot drive fast, flat out, consistently. It would have to be a 250 mile an hour car to sit comfortably at 180. A car that's doing 180 to sit at 180 and do that for 3 hours is a car waiting to blow the fuck up. You're just going to ruin the engine. Okay. Now imagine you are an athlete of any description, typical Joe, part of the 5%, part of the 1%. You cannot train flat out, balls out, non-stop. You just can't. I've done it. Steve's done it. Other people have done it, and we've got broken. Whether that was not warming up, like Steve said, on the bench, doing other stupid shit, running the fucking clappers, doing triathlons, as I know Steve's done back in the day, whatever else. The recovery part was as important. Easing the fuck back off the gas, to use that car analogy, was important. So, for example, my numbers when I ease back, Steve, are still good numbers. But again, just as an example today, 350 kilograms, 770 pounds for 4 reps with a plan of maybe doubling 380, maybe single 400 or 410 kilos, 900 fucking pounds in the next week or two before I ease the fuck back off the gas. And I might back down to 250, 260, 280 kilograms, 5, 6, 700, sorry, 600 and something odd pounds. But I won't be doing 900 pounds in a few weeks' time. No, I would have worked my way to a PR, a PB, a peak of strength. And then I would ease the fuck back off. I would do something for reps, or I'll change the exercise, and I'll give that part, that element, that thing that I'm doing, a fucking chance to recover and get better maybe again at some point in the future. Hell, Steve, I might not ever be that strong again. Who knows? But I can't go balls out. So you need to cycle your strength. You need to sometimes, especially if you're building up a particular physique title or a way that you want to look, and especially if you've been doing 12, 16 weeks, sometimes you need to put maybe once, maybe twice, a deload week in. And talk about deloading, Steve, cycling the strength before we talk about proper form and
Yeah, and
onto
there's
your
no,
joints.
I don't think there's a definite like definition of deloading, but the way I always approach deloading is this is why I tell people I say 50% less. So whatever set, if you do 20 sets a session, do 10 sets. If you're doing 10 reps, do 5 reps. And if you're doing this much weight on this much weight, do 50% less. So, and again, if you are an egomaniac and that might be hard for you because you're going to get into the gym and you're like, yeah, I'm going to deload today. I'm going to do half as much weight. I'm usually benching 300 for reps. Well, I'm only going to do 150 for reps for this split. That might be hard for you because the dude next to you sits down and's throwing 3 plates on the bar and you're like, fuck it. I want to compete against them. So, that's one of those things where sometimes working out in a gym environment works against you, because you're more worried about impressing people than you are of taking care of yourself. But that's basically what deloading is. And look, it's all about you're not just not training, you're still going to train, but you're
Yes.
doing a little less. And that's important because it doesn't wear down your body. It gives your body a chance to kind of catch up. It gives your entire body, your system, your CNS and everything in your body, even your brain, it gives your everything a chance to catch up to the amount, especially if you've been improving very rapidly. And that's why it's important when you're using anabolic steroids, it ties into it to kind of realize, well, you know what? Maybe I've put on a little too much strength too fast. Maybe it's time for me to come off my cycle a little early because I'm gaining too much strength. And now I'm worried that I'm going to cause some type of damage. You got to remember long term, it's one thing, certain things, joint problems or whatever, or one thing, but long term, do you want to have to get a hip replacement at 50 years old? Do you want to have to get a shoulder replacement? Do you want to have a surgery on your shoulder? Do you want to have to, um, get a knee replacement because you're squatting and you're doing too much weight and you're grinding on those ligaments? How many people do I know who are your age, Mobster, who go and get MRIs done and go to an orthopedic, and the orthopedic tells them you're bone on bone. Your knees are
Yeah.
bone on bone. Your hips are
Yeah.
bone on bone.
Yeah.
You have a choice. You can either stop exercising or you can have a knee replacement or a hip replacement. And you know how expensive those things are? So you don't want to end up one of those people. So you got to start young. You got to start doing it the right way young. Because as Mobster said at the beginning of the podcast, what's fascinating is this is always going to happen where when you're young, you can do things
Oh, please.
wrong
Yeah.
and get away
Yeah.
with it. You can
Yeah.
train through injuries and the injuries
Yeah.
will go away. But as you get older, that doesn't happen anymore, but you get used to it happening. So you figure, yeah, when I'm 40, 45, and I'm getting swelling in my knee. You know what? Fuck it. Let me just go in there and squat and do deadlifts anyway and do leg extensions because this, when I was, this happened to me 10 years ago and I was fine. I just worked my way through it. But what happens is as you get older, your body starts breaking down and it's unable. And these types of injuries become chronic and they become something that never go away. So you
Yes.
got to kind of just be disciplined with your training from a young age and learn good habits from a young age. If you start learning the habit of I'm going to go and just not warm up and then not stretch after and not do my mobility work, you start developing that habit, then it turns into something you don't do and it becomes habitual and you end up just it's just you end up hurting yourself in the end. So it doesn't
Let
make
me
any
use,
sense.
yeah, let me use this example. There's a phrase that a lot of our listeners will be familiar with, and that is that you are your own worst enemy. And again, Steve and I have been guilty of this. Steve's given you an example, I've given you an example. Okay. So again, this actually applies to the particular threads in question I'm thinking of on the forum where the individuals in question had two ongoing injuries. One was specific to the knee, and the other one, which is incredibly common because the knee injuries become, fortunately, Steve, less common. The other one, which is incredibly common in bodybuilding and weightlifting and training generally, is the shoulder and to a lesser degree the elbow. But let's just address the shoulder, right? I've had buddies that both had the same injury and they were the only two that were training together in the gym. So what the fuck are you two doing, both of you, that you've both got literally one side, I think it was the left side, it might be the right, doesn't matter, that they both had a left shoulder injury. So what the fuck was they both doing when they trained together that they both had a left shoulder injury at the same time? It wasn't mutual reach around, Steve. It was some sort of weird workout that they've been doing. And again, we're our own worst enemies. Sometimes, and we've just done a podcast where we talked about the benefits of having a log. Sometimes we have people come in and say, okay, listen, so you've got this ongoing shoulder injury and you're doing the same goddamn workout before the shoulder injury that caused the shoulder injury, and now you're doing it again because you're on PEDs and they're allowing you to get away with it, masking the pain, helping you to keep muscle there, etc., etc. So, as an example, Steve, train it differently. Don't do the fucking workout that you like to do that keeps you in pain and discomfort and wear and tear. It's a silly analogy. I can think of a local that I see when I'm out walking, and he's got a knee injury, but trying to avoid surgery. And I'm thinking if the pain or the wear and tear is in one specific location on the knee, just from bone on bone, like Steve mentioned earlier on, literally have an orthopedic insert in his shoe might shift the emphasis where the bone sits to another place on the knee. So we'd actually move the discomfort because that part that's touching would no longer touch, or it would touch in an area that's still healthy. And so it's silly things like that. We will continue to do high volume. Look, as an example, Steve, pretty much every back exercise, every shoulder exercise, a lot of the tricep exercises, some of the bicep exercises, benching especially, it's all around the shoulder joint. And it's literally just a ball and socket joint. It's literally muscle and tendons and sinews holding that ball against the socket. And the range of movement, I believe, is something like 270 degrees, which, if you're flexible, is a huge range of movement. And that's just backwards and forwards, never mind laterally. And it's just held in. So it's like a series of rubber bands and a couple of other, and a bit of muscle, Steve, all holding it. Your elbow and your knee and your ankle, by comparison, are much more sturdy. Okay. So we need sometimes to change the fucking workout. We need sometimes to do something different. For example, I'm thinking of Ronnie Coleman again, Steve, and he's not the only person where he would do one heavy-ish, more compound type chest workout, and then a lighter, relative to the heavyweight, different, more isolating type workout at some point in his career. In other words, he was hitting the chest twice a week, but he wasn't hitting it heavy twice a week. And again, I've talked about this before, Steve, where some people get stuck literally on the whole 7 days a week. Your body doesn't care how many days of the week. You can still do the same days, but you could have 5 days or 6 days in between a body part that has an injury, that has an ongoing issue, that needs more time to recover. So instead of training it every week, every 7 days, you could have it every 2 weeks, or you could have a light workout week 1 and a heavy workout week 2. You need sometimes to have that step back and a little bit of self-analysis that allows you to objectively realize, if I carry on doing this shit, I'm going to fuck myself up. Let me expand on this a little bit into the next subject, which is form. And again, being guilty, seen there and done this. My pressing overhead, Steve, at some point was so fucking bad. I believe I was up around the 200 pounds mark on the seated press. My right arm would lock out, and my left arm was literally halfway to the lockout. And I realized what the fuck I was doing and how stupid I was being to try and get these numbers, to try and hit the poundage. And I spent 2 weeks backing the fuck off, about being actually more, backing the fuck off, went down to less weight and spent the next how many weeks, whatever it was, doing the bar straight so that both arms will lock out in the same position. Because at some point, the risk of me injury on my left side, because I'm right side dominant, and the way that I was training was horrendously bad. And we see people like this in the gym all the time. Okay. A cheating has its place. Loose form has its place, but it's only after you've worked, whether strength training or bodybuilding or whatever else, isolating the muscle to the best you possibly can, and then a little bit of loose form to get the thing up. But when we see people throwing the weights up, there are literally Instagram and YouTube videos of, and I'm thinking of some South American guys almost made himself kind of famous doing stupid shit with a leg press. I like some heavyweight on the leg press thing, but this guy's got like 2,000 pounds on the machine. He's moving it an inch, and he weighs about 120 pounds. And you're just like, any second now, that leg's gonna snap. Any second now, his hip's gonna pop, and he will be crippled for fucking life. And he's just an extreme example. People not being sensible and asked how to do an exercise. There's a great guy that goes to my gym, and I don't know whether he's restricted in some way. I don't think he is. Ex-army, very nice fella. But the form is like, what the fuck are you doing? And Steve, talk about the necessity of good form versus the badness and the injury risk of bad form.
So one of the things, when I first started lifting, Olympic style lifting, and I was really lucky I had a coach who would, work with me and teach me correct form, how to do the clean and jerks, how to do the squats, how to do the bench press with correct form. And obviously, when you're doing a bench press, if your butt comes off or your foot comes off, it's a scratch. So you have to do good form or it's not going to count in a competitive setting. So otherwise, who's going to teach you? And the problem is it's almost like TMI. You go on these YouTube videos, like you said, Mobster, and they're more for clicks. They're not for teaching you correct form. So it's very, very important to learn the correct way to do it and use correct form. I've seen some young dudes at the gym doing squats, and the form was on fucking point. And you can tell, I was very impressed by it. And you can tell that they, work in their school. They have a good weightlifting program. They have coaches who show them how to do correct form, where they learn to do it ass to grass perfectly. Feet are grounded perfectly, pointed in the right direction. Hips are square to the bar. No bending forward. No, no unbalanced. Just a perfect form. So really going light. And I would say this is the way you do it. It takes a lot of patience, and I'd rather you go light and do it correctly than go heavy. I see people loading up on the deadlifts and putting plates on the deadlifts and doing horrifically bad form, and you're not helping your situation. You're not training yourself to do it properly. It's like learning how to drive a car and not learning how to drive a car properly. You're driving a stick shift and you learn incorrectly how to drive that stick shift, and you ride that stick, and what ends up happening is after like a year, you have to take your car in to have the stick shift replaced because you rode it so many times, you're causing smoke and everything, and you grinded that stick shift because you never learned how to drive your stick shift correctly. And you can't ride that stick shift. You can't ride it, otherwise it's going to burn it out, so you have to learn how to do it correctly from day one. So it's important to stay patient and learn. You have to start with correct form and doing less weight and build consistency at a lower weight if you're going to lift heavy one day and you're going to continue to improve. And you got to realize you have to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's not always going to be a linear fashion where you're going to improve. Like Mobster hitting a PR, with his lifts, he didn't just like continuously improve his weight every single session. He had to take 2 steps forward, especially when you're cycling steroids, because this is where the injuries happen. When people start, because they get so strong on cycle, then they come off and they don't accept that they're going to lose strength when you come off, because the steroids are giving you that advantage. They're doing things that you're getting that you don't normally get in a natural setting. So you're going to lose strength when you come off a steroid cycle. That's normal. So you have to accept that and
Yes,
understand you're going to have to.
adapt and change the variables and
Because if you don't,
realize that you
if
can get some of the strength back and train it. There's always
yeah,
another cycle. There's always another way to train in the future, Steve.
you're just going to injure yourself if you keep trying to do the same amount of weight. So you have to, it's normal to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You got to, one of the tips someone gave me a long time ago, he's an older guy, mobster, and he was older than you now.
Mm.
Back in the day, he was in his maybe early 50s. And he's probably now, I don't know, he's probably dead by now. He's probably in his 70s now. But one of the tips he gave me is build consistency out of lower weight. And that's how you get stronger.
Yeah,
And always, he told me always, he gave me a really good tip. He's like, always back off when you notice that you've hit a plateau. Instead of trying
yeah,
to
yeah,
push through that plateau,
yeah,
he
yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah.
back off and go take back a couple steps at lower weight, build consistency again, and then you can work your way back up, and then you can blow through that PR. Instead of thinking logically, you're going to think, oh my God, I need to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and trying to hit a PR. And then you end up injuring yourself. And now you're setting yourself back months in the process. So you have to voluntarily back off the weight and voluntarily build consistency out of lower weight and leave that ego aside. And that can help you build. So, Mobster, we
I,
have a
I,
couple
I,
minutes left.
I call
Finish
that
up.
old
Yeah.
man strength. I call that old man strength, Steve, where you are relatively strong when you're not cycling steroids, and you have cycled back down in terms of the percentages, but you still pushing. In my case, would be 3 plates or more on the bench. Let me just finish with this following as well, Steve. Look at joint products. It's an investment of your into your time and your health. So glucosamine can draw it in products like this. Bone broth. Steve's way big on bone broth as a way of keeping your joints lubricated for healing your tendons and your connective tissue, the fascia, the membrane around your muscle. Look also at collagen, the variations and variable different kind of products, of various products that are available in collagen. These 3 things, I take a joint product all the time. Steve's big on a bone broth. We're looking to make sure that the connective tissues, the stuff that holds our muscles together, wraps around the fascia that wraps around our muscles, etc., 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 is kept as healthy as we can, while we're of course pushing to make the muscles fibers bigger, stronger, more flexible, work quicker, and so on and so forth for the various sports that we do. So those things are super, super important. Come onto the forums, check out the information we have on bone broth recipes, where to get good joint products, what collagen products we recommend, and of course, look at the way we cycle our strength, the way that we train, any advice that we give each other on the logs. That's super, super important. Please note, we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It's our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. Our podcast are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.